Welcome back to another episode of Tea with Carley. I am your host, Carley, aka Teacher Carley, and today, if you noticed, the title of today's podcast is Summertime Sadness. So, summertime sadness. Like I said, just to reiterate, this podcast is going to be about anything and everything. Like the title is literally Tea with Carley. So, I'm going to talk about anything that's on my mind. But before we get on with the podcast, today is June 19th. The day that this podcast goes live is June 19th. And so on this day in history, you guys know I love me some history. So on this day in history in 1964, the Civil Rights Act was approved. Big day for history. 1964, the Civil Rights Act was approved. In 1978, Garfield, holder of the Guinness World Record for the world's most widely syndicated comic strip, makes its debut. If you guys don't know, Garfield is a comic strip. Actually, now it's like a movie, a cartoon, but it began as a comic that you would see in the newspaper. People would read it. It was very cute. It's like a little round, fat orange cat named Garfield, and it is holder of the Guinness World Record for the most widely syndicated comic strip. It first debuted on June 19th, 1978. That's a fun fact. Our topic today, summertime sadness. All right. Honestly, my YouTube channel, the videos there are more so learning. It's geared towards learning something. You go to that video and it's fun. You have stories that you listen to that I tell, whatever, but you learn something. At the end of the video, you learn something. Here, now, if you're an ESL learner and you're watching this or listening rather, I'm not going to say that you're not going to learn anything, because you will. Just getting in the habit of listening to somebody speak in English is going to help you tremendously on your English language journey. However, it's not a classroom setting. This podcast is here just to talk and for you guys to listen and to comment in the comments, things that you want me to talk about, things that you want to hear, things that you want to know. That's what this podcast is all about, because I love to talk. And, I think I'm pretty good at explaining things. So if you have anything you would like for me to talk about, just shoot me a message or comment here in the comments below, and I'll make sure to bring it up next time. But today, I'm just going to discuss the trends that we have here in America for summer camps, maybe their benefits, and, even the various types of camps that we have available. We have sport camp, art camp, science camp, this, that, and another camp. We have a bunch of different camps available in the summertime, of course, for kids. But we're also going to go over ways that kids can be entertained at home during the summer. If you are a parent, such as I, you'll know the struggle is real. It's hard to keep kids entertained in the summer when they are home all summer long and you have nothing for them to do. All right, so we're going to go over things to do in the summer and sometimes the sadness, the summertime sadness that it brings. All right, so the first thing I mentioned is camps. Now, when I was growing up, I did a few summer camps. I did a church camp almost every year. Well, that's kind of a lie. I went when I was 5 years old, and even though I enjoyed it, my mom was like, she's still my baby and she's way too young to be going to summer camp. So my mom didn't allow me to go back for a couple years, but then I started going back almost every year. It was a church summer camp, and it was a week-long summer camp, and I really truly enjoyed it. We did things such as swimming, archery, canoeing. Of course, we had chapel like twice a day because it was a church camp. We had bonfires that we did, basketball. Sometimes you had inflatables that were out there. We were jumping on the inflatables or water slides. We would play a paintball. There was just a lot of things that we did in the summer camp. And I truly had a lot of fun. And some of my best childhood memories were at summer camp growing up. I went to Trinity Youth Camp. Trinity was a school that I attended, also the church that I attended growing up in Jacksonville, Florida. And they had a youth camp, which isn't in Jacksonville. It's actually outside. I think it's like in Keystone Heights, if I remember right, or something along those lines. It's been a long time since I've been to youth camp, but I went to that summer camp almost every year growing up, and it was amazing. But also, there's other things. I remember one year I went to a summer camp. My dad was military, so I went to a summer camp on the military base. And it was kind of like YMCA vibes, you know? There was things like there was like a huge gymnasium and they had different activities for us to do, you know, the huge rainbow colored sheet that everybody holds on to and you pull it up in the air and then you try to run underneath, you know, the average. If you Google it, like 1990s gym activities, you're going to see that rainbow colored sheet that everybody does. I think that's universal everywhere in the world. So we had things like that, and we had arts and crafts and, you know, things to keep us entertained. However, it was always just 1 week long. Summer is for 2 months. And, you know, at least here in America, summer is 2 months long, sometimes even longer, maybe 10 weeks long or whatever. And the camps are for 1 week. Now, back in the day, I don't know how much my parents could pay for a summer camp, but this day and age, you know, now that I'm a parent and I have kids that want to do summer camps, or my kids actually don't even want to do summer camp. I want them to do summer camp, you know, I want them to do something fun. But it is so crazy expensive these days. My oldest son, he loves soccer. And so I was trying to get him involved in a soccer summer camp. Again, it's only for a week. There are some that are like 2 weeks long, but only 3 days a week. So it equals up to being about a week. And it's only for a few hours. Back in the day, I sound like a grandpa, but back in my day, my summer camp was literally overnight. It was exactly that. It was a summer camp overnight. Like we had bunk beds, we showered there, we ate there. Like it was five nights that we slept there. And then the sixth day we would come home. But this day and age, it's like, oh, let me charge you $300 for a soccer summer camp. That's only going to be like 3 or 4 hours a day. And I'm going to say that the start time is going to be 10 a.m. And then we're going to finish up maybe around 1, sometimes 2 p.m. I'm sorry. But first of all, people work. I work, all right? I work and I cannot just take my kid to a summer camp at 10 a.m. every day or every other day for a week or 2 weeks. And I cannot go back at 1 or 2 p.m. and pick them up. Like, people have work. I mean, I don't know how some people do it, you know, because I'm like, how are you taking your kid to and from these camps, but you're also a full-time employee? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, and it's like outrageously priced these days. So I told my son, I was like, you know, there's no way I can get you to that camp. First of all, it was like a 30-minute drive away. I'm like, I'm going to have to get off work at 9:30 a.m., drive you there, get back off work at like 1 or 1:30 p.m., pick you up, and then drive back. Like that's a lot of work I'm going to be missing. I can't do that. So then I was like, well, how about we do some swimming classes or swim team. You know, fun fact about me, I was on swim team my entire life, and I'm not even joking, my entire childhood until I was 18, 19 years old. I even went to school or went to university. I still swam. I love swimming, and I was very good at swimming. I was a competitive swimmer my entire life. I still am pretty good. I'm just a little bit older. My bones ache a little bit more these days when I swim. So I was like, you know what? I bet my kids will be really good at swimming because, you know, they're my kids, you know, they have it in their DNA. The swimming pool is literally in our neighborhood. And I'm like, all right, well, it's like the next neighborhood over, but we share it. And I'm like, all right, I can get you to this pool. No problem. When's the class? When's the team? So they said swim lessons for my youngest son. He's 4, so he needs swimming lessons. The time slot was 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Again, do people not work? I'm like, honestly, I don't know how anybody could get to this time, but yeah, it's filled up. The slots are full. People make time for it. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, all right, well, maybe we can't do that swim lessons for him. Worst case scenario, I just teach him how to swim. I'm well overqualified. I can do that. So I'm like, what about swim team for my oldest son? Swim team. And they're like, well, swim team is from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And I'm like, okay, that's much more doable. for 1 week. What? How can you be on a swim team for a week? That's like swim lessons. Swimming lessons is a week long. Swim team is not a week. They're like, yeah. And then I was like, well, what about the next? Oh, you pay weekly. So if he wants to be on it for the whole summer, I'll have to pay every week. And I was like, well, how much is it? Like $110. $110 a week for you to be on a swim team that you swim for an hour a day. I don't know how people do it. Like, I was like, absolutely not. I told my son, I was like, if you want to swim, I'll throw you in the pond. I will watch you swim. Like, you don't have to, we're not doing this. The pond is free. Yeah, you might get some things biting at your toes, but the pond's free. I'll throw you in the pond. You can swim. I was like, this is ridiculous, the prices. And I do think, it's inflation and like times have changed and everything. And I'm not going to make this podcast all about me complaining about how it was so cheap when I was a kid to like enjoy summer and now it's so expensive and difficult. But I will say, as a parent, as a mother, it's hard to come up with ideas for your children to do during the summer. I kind of made a schedule. Do my kids obey the schedule? Absolutely not. Every day I have to remind them that I created a schedule for them. They wake up, they eat breakfast, no snacks, breakfast first. And then I'm like, okay, you can have an hour to just do whatever you want, like chill, not screen time. They can't be on their electronics, but you can chill, do whatever you want. And then I got workbooks. I'm like, okay, you do another hour or 30 minutes rather of your workbook. And then my oldest son, after his workbook, I make him read 10 to 20 pages in a book that he's reading. And then after that, I'm like, all right, you have another hour of free time, but no screen time. They do another hour of free time. Then after that, it's usually lunchtime. They eat lunch. After that, I'm like, all right, you guys can choose. You only get 2 hours of screen time per day. So you need to choose, when you want to use it and use it wisely. So then my oldest son, he's like, oh man, okay, he comes up with his own schedule. He's like, okay, I'm going to play for 20 minutes right now because my friend is online and we can play games together. But then I'm going to save the rest of the time for later tonight when my brother is asleep because I don't want to be bothered, and he's like trying to come up with his own plan. But yeah, and then later on in the day, usually around 2 or 3 o'clock, I make them go outside in the backyard for an hour, play outside. And I'm like, all right, you guys do that. And then they're allowed to have like a snack, 3 snacks a day. That's the top rule, because if I don't give them a cap on snacks, they will literally eat everything in this house. And I'm not even joking. I have 2 boys. They are growing. They will literally eat me into the poorhouse. Like, I will be poor if I don't say and make rules like, hey, only 3 snacks a day. I give you 3 meals and then you get 3 snacks and that's that. Maybe a popsicle as well, but that's it. So I try to make a schedule for them and I try to do fun things. My youngest son, he also has like a little workbook. He's going to be in K4. So I have like a little workbook for him learning his ABCs. That is torture. I'm not going to lie, for the both of us, me trying to get him to write in the workbook, him trying to sit still and actually do it. But, I'm trying to be that mom, I'm trying to be the mom, the fun mom. So I have that. And then I try to come up with some DIY craft things. Now, my oldest son, he is very creative and he loves Legos. So he can entertain himself for hours, like creating things. Like a lot of the times when I have a craft idea, he's like, Mom, I don't want to do that. Can I just play with Legos? And I'm like, cool, you go do that. So he's very like creative and he'll stay occupied. But my youngest, man, it's just, my youngest has ADD, ADHD, just like myself. And it's just very hard for him to sit still and focus. So it's really hard to keep him entertained because he's all over the place. So I try to come up with ideas, crafts, maybe some backyard games. I have like a little inflatable pool. I have yet to fill it up this summer because honestly, I'm dreading cleaning it from last summer. It's been in storage and I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna have to get it down and clean it out and fill it up. And it's expensive too. I waste a lot of water keeping that thing filled up and everything. So I have that for them to do. Maybe cooking, baking some cookies, doing something fun together, having my oldest son read to his brother, taking them to like local events. I try to do that, but it's just hard. And I said I'm not going to complain this whole podcast. I don't know if that's true or not now that I'm looking at the outline I made for today. It is a little bit of complaining, but it's just honesty. It's hard as a mom during the summer coming up with ideas to make sure your kids' summer is enjoyable and also that they're making the most of it, that they're not just sitting there in front of the TV or on the electronics, like melting their brain. You want them to get the most out of summer. So that's why I try to lock them in the backyard. Now, I'm joking. I don't actually lock them in the backyard. Sometimes they do mistakenly lock themselves and then they bang on the door because they accidentally lock themselves out. But I try to do fun things with them. Local events, like we try to go to multicultural festivals or things like that. Some events here and there, but everything costs money these days, even like the only free thing I think, and I don't even know if it's free anymore, is, going to the library. Maybe that's still free, but it's expensive. And there's, a couple water parks in our town, and my kids were like, it'd be fun to go to a water park. And I'm like, okay, let me try to plan that. So I'm planning that. But even that is like, a couple $100, to go to a water park. And I'm like, man, it's not that it's like I'm putting a price on my kids, fun, I want my kids to have fun, but it's just like nothing is free anymore, nothing is inexpensive. Last week, at the time of this recording, my birthday was a few days ago. And last week I wanted to go bowling with my family, with my kids and my husband, just for fun. Like I grew up basically in a bowling alley. Fun fact, my mom was a professional bowler on the side. She was a lot of things. She was a jack of many trades. She was a teacher. She was a plumber and then a professional bowler. She was a pastor's wife. She was a lot of things. But now she is retired, and just goes by Nana or Nanny. She's a grandma now, full time. But when I was growing up, I basically lived inside of a bowling alley because my mom was always there bowling, and I love bowling as well. So I was like, you know what? This is something, a childhood memory that I want to share with my own kids, I want to take them bowling. So we go to the bowling alley, and they're like, oh, you have to register, like reserve a lane online now. And I'm like, okay, that's fair. That's cool. So I go online and I go to reserve the lane, and the minimum time is 2 hours. And I'm like, okay, this sounds good, 2 hours. But again, my youngest is 4 years old and my youngest has never been bowling before. So I don't know how this is going to play out. Am I going to leave early because he is being such a pain in my butt before the 2 hours? I don't know. So I was like, all right, 2 hours, we can deal with 2 hours. And then, it's like, oh, the shoes come free. And I'm like, oh, cool. Free, bowling shoe rental. That's cool. So I put, 4 people, my husband and I and our 2 kids, I put it all in the cart and I go to check out and reserve the lane. And it's $113. 113 US dollars for 2 hours of family fun bowling. And I'm like, that is crazy. Needless to say, we did not go bowling that day. But the whole ride home, I talked my husband's ear off, just saying how when I was a kid, it was $5 for an hour. $5 an hour to bowl. Now it's like $25. That's crazy to me. And he was like, yeah, it's not the 1990s anymore. And I was like, but even in the early 2000s, I used to have like a lot of birthday parties at the bowling alley. And, it was still, my parents would only pay like $100 and 10 kids got to bowl, and then they gave you a free cake. That was the thing. And he's like, yeah, times have changed. And I'm like, you know what? It's just so hard in the summer to keep your kids occupied. All right. So I try to focus on, balancing structured activities. I told you I have the schedule of things with also free time, playtime. I always tell them, hey, you have an entire room filled with toys. Please go play with them. If I count up all the money that I have spent, or that has been spent, maybe not me, but, just me, dad, grandma, grandpa, aunts, uncles, all the money we have spent on buying you toys. It's a lot of money and you never play with them. So I try to encourage them to play with their toys or, go outside and play, but also you have structured activities such as like, their workbooks or reading or crafts like that. But screen time is really where I struggle. I struggle because we're living in this time, this day and age where everything is digital. And then also sometimes I feel like a hypocrite when I tell my kids only 2 hours a day screen time. On the weekends, I allow them to have a little bit more, but during the summer, Monday through Friday, they're allowed 2 hours. During the school year, Monday through Friday, 0 hours screen time. No screen time Monday through Friday. It's only on the weekends. But during the summer, 2 hours Monday through Friday. And I'm not going to lie, I struggle managing their screen time. I try to suggest some educational apps or, some different online platforms that are geared towards kids that they can it's like they can have fun, it's like educational, but they can also have fun doing it. But, they always want to just play their video games. And, it's hard for me to tell them no, because I feel like a hypocrite because I work all day using a screen. I record for you guys using screens. I research for my recordings using screens. And then at the end of the day, when I want to relax, I use a screen most of the time, either on my phone or on TV. So sometimes I feel like a hypocrite when I tell them like, hey, okay, you've been on the screen too much today, go do something else. But I feel like it is important. As parents, we need to realize that one, they are living in a different day and age than we were when we were growing up. So things have changed. But two, it's important for them to be well-rounded. They need to, know how to act without a digital device in their hand as well. So I'm not going to lie. I struggle with this. I'm still, my kids, I'm a pushover. So my kids beg me for more screen time every day. I have realized though, that if I tell them, okay, if you got everything else done, if you go above and beyond, you read more pages than you're supposed to, you work in your workbook more than you're supposed to, you get all your chores done, you clean your room, you help out around the house, you help, for my oldest, you help with your brother, maybe then you can earn more screen time. I try to give him incentives, like earn more screen time by doing this, but it's hard. I suggest, trying to make family outings when you can, because when you're outside, you may spend money, so it's like a catch-22, like, oh, you're outside of the house, they're not bored, but you're spending money because you're outside of the house. But maybe a free park, or we like to go walking on a trail. My kids bring their little scooters and we walk on the trail. But yeah, that could be fun. Or, coming up with little crafts, even if it's like baking. My youngest, he thought it was the most amazing thing ever when he was able to help bake cookies. So little things like that can also be fun for them to do in the summer. I know I've talked the past like 25 minutes about summertime and the sadness it brings and how it's so different from when I was a kid. But there are some popular slang and idioms that we have here in America, especially during the summer. So one idiom that you might hear, especially in July, especially if you're in the South, you might hear the idiom dog days of summer. Dog days of summer. And somebody might say something along the lines of, man, we are really in the dog days of summer right now. Like, oh, dude, I'm sweating so bad. This is the dog days of summer. So this idiom, dog days of summer, just means the hottest period of the summer. It's the hottest time right now, the hottest period of the summer. Usually that's the end of July, beginning of August for us. Another idiom that you might hear or you might use is beat the heat. Beat the heat. So you can hear this maybe when somebody says, I was trying to beat the heat, so I turned the water hose on and let my kids just have at it. Just play around, have fun. We were all just trying to beat the heat. And this just means to stay cool in the hot weather. If you're trying to beat the heat, you're trying to stay cool in the hot weather. So a lot of people say, you know what? I don't care that I had a huge electric bill. I ran my AC the entire month because I was trying to beat the heat. I didn't care about anything other than staying cool. This is me. You know what? I got to do what I got to do to survive. I'm going to beat the heat by staying inside my house with the AC on. Beat the heat. And then there's also a slang. I thought it was an idiom, but it's more so a slang, and it's catch some rays. Catch some rays. If you want to catch some rays, a lot of times people would say this if they are going to the beach or they're going outside to go tanning. You say, hey, I need to catch some rays, which means I need to go outside, get some sunlight, maybe tan or sunbathe, catch some rays. I actually said this a couple weeks ago because I was trying on shorts for the summer. You know, it's hot and I need to buy me some new shorts. And I was looking at my legs and I'm like, oh, they are white. They are very white. I need to catch some rays. I need to get some sun. We were wearing pants for the past 6-7 months and I did not realize just how white my legs have gotten. So I definitely needed to catch some rays. So dog days of summer, beat the heat, catch some rays. Those are just a few things that you might hear this summer, whether it be on TV with your friends or out and about. They're just very common, especially in the summertime. So I have 3 questions now that you guys have asked. And I want to start encouraging you guys more and more to submit your questions, whether that be here in the comments or messaging me if you're one of my students just asking me during one of our classes. Shoot me a message, whatever you have to do. I want to answer your questions on this podcast. And again, that can be about American culture. It can be about English, obviously, FasciNATIVE English. This is what we're all on here for, right? To learn English. So it could be about English, about American culture, about my life in general, like anything you would just be like, you know what? Carly probably has the answers to this. Ask away, all right? So somebody asked on my Instagram, how can I improve my pronunciation to sound more like a native speaker? So again, the question was, how can I improve my pronunciation to sound more like a native speaker? So, in my opinion, this is a very good question, by the way, because that's basically what everybody wants, right? You want to sound like a native English speaker. You don't want to have an accent. You want to sound as native as possible when you are learning another language. So my answer would be to focus more on listening and mimicking. All right, this is the key word, mimicking native English speakers. You can do this through podcasts such as this, watching movies, YouTube videos. FasciNATIVE English is a really good one. You should check it out. LOL. Or, anything. You just try to mimic us. So almost like, you're copying somebody, when you were a kid and maybe your sibling or your cousin, you would say something and then they would repeat it in your tone of voice too. So maybe you would say, stop doing that. And then your cousin will be like, stop doing that. And you're like, hey, stop copying me. Stop copying me. This is what you need to do. It sounds crazy, but you need to start mimicking and copying native English speakers and how they speak, because this is us. I tell you guys, my slogan, if you haven't noticed, it's real talk with real English. If you go on my homepage, you look at my YouTube banner, real talk with real English. And that's because this is how we talk. This is how native English speakers speak. So the best way for you to learn how to pronounce things or how to sound like a native English speaker is to copy a native English speaker. Don't think that you're copying and you're like, oh, I don't want to sound just like them. Of course, you're not going to sound just like us. You are you. You are unique because you're yourself. But you can start copying the way we say things, even the idioms or slang that we use, and that's how you become more natural in your speaking, how you become a native or non-native native English speaker. All right. There's also tools though for you. There's apps. I teach, and I will always recommend the Speak English with Tiffany Academy. I teach for that academy, and there is a specific course called the Speak English Like a Native course. I am a teacher in that course. So there's courses you can take. There are tools and apps that you can download. And then another thing that I always recommend is to record yourself and then compare it to native English speakers. So record yourself talking, there's a topic and you talk about that topic for 10, 20 minutes, maybe even shorter, 5 or 10 minutes. You record yourself talking about that, and then you compare it to a native English speaker who also talked about that. Or even if they're not talking about that topic, just compare it to a native English speaker. And last, for this question, tongue twisters. Now, I know tongue twisters are so annoying to a lot of people. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, or Sally sold seashells by the seashore, and you say these things faster and faster. How much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? Because when I was learning Korean, there are a few Korean tongue twisters that I would do for practice, and I hated it because I was so afraid that I was going to say a bad word or something. I'm like, this is not good. Like I need to, it's a tongue twister for a reason. It's hard to pronounce, but it helped me so much with my pronunciation. It really did, because you are putting your tongue in these weird ways that your tongue has never, seen before, never done before. And you are practicing how to pronounce, whether it sounds crazy, Sally sold seashells by the seashore. Why do I have to say this? S is sometimes hard for people to pronounce, especially the sa, like Sally, and then sold, shells. Like, these are hard to pronounce for a lot of ESL learners. So it's making you say them over and over again in a fun, way as a tongue twister, so that you learn. It doesn't feel like you're learning. You're frustrated because it's so difficult sometimes, but you learn from that. So just to recap, to answer your question, how can I improve my pronunciation to sound more like a native speaker? Mimic us, copy us 1000%, copy us native English speakers, watch us, on YouTube, listen to our podcast, movies, TV shows, then use apps or join a course. I suggested the Speak English with Tiffany Academy and the Speak English Like a Native course. And then tongue twisters. All right. Tongue twisters are actually your friend, even though you might view them or see them as your enemy. All right. Someone else also asked a question: how can I enhance my listening skills to understand native speakers better? All right, so how can I enhance my listening skills to understand native speakers better? So I would say, again, just regularly on the daily or whenever you get a chance, listen to English content. Turn on the news. Listen to podcasts such as this one. Audiobooks, and do them at different speeds. All right, so an audiobook, you can listen to it at one speed. You come on my podcast, this is my speed. This is how I talk. Sometimes I talk fast. Sometimes I talk slow. When I get excited, I tend to talk a little faster. This is how a native English speaker speaks, So just listen, just by listening, you can use subtitles every now and then. They're not bad. I know there's so many people that's like, oh, if I use subtitles, then I'm not going to learn. No, subtitles shouldn't be used solely for just reading. It should be used as a tool so that it is there if you need it. It's kind of one of those things my mom used to tell me: I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And this can apply to many things in your life. But for subtitles, that's what I do. I'd rather have them on the screen and not need them than need them but not have them on the screen, and be completely lost. So use subtitles when you're watching or even listening, and reduce your reliance on them gradually. Like, oh, maybe when you first start, you have to read the majority, but then after a couple months, you notice you're only reading the little things, and then after a year, you don't even really need them, but there's one word that you didn't understand, so you go back and you're like, oh, that's what it means. Practice listening to various accents and dialects. I guess that would help as well. And all in all, just try every chance you get to engage in conversations with native English speakers when possible. I know a lot of you still live in your own country. You don't live abroad. It's hard for you to find native English speakers to speak with, but when it's possible, try to engage in conversation. And that is how you can enhance your listening skills to understand us native English speakers better. So again, just listen to us. Listen to us on podcast, on the news, on TV, audiobooks. Use subtitles because they're not evil. Subtitles are not evil. They can be a really good tool if they are used correctly. And then, practice listening to different accents. This is American English. I am an American. This is my accent. And I will say American English, if I'm correct, still holds the title of being the global language, American accent. But again, there's so many countries in the world that speak English. So you're going to have to adapt. And even here in America, we have different accents depending on where you are, what state you're in. So listen to different accents and then just talk to us. Every chance you get, try to have a conversation in English. And that is how you can enhance your listening skills. The final question for today, someone asked, how can I practice speaking English regularly if I don't live in an English-speaking country? So, how can I practice speaking English regularly if I don't live in an English-speaking country? All right. First of all, don't be scared to talk to us. Even if you live in a foreign country and you feel like, oh man, like there's a new American, employee at my job, but I don't know if I want to talk to him or her because I'm nervous because my English isn't that great. Don't be scared. Trust me, I have been an expat. I have lived abroad for many years, and I truly appreciate when the natives try their best to communicate with me in English. It makes me feel that they understand. They understand that it's hard. They understand that me speaking Korean all day when I was living in Korea literally gave me migraines every day for like an entire year. And I'm not even joking. When I was learning Korean, when I had to hear Korean and speak Korean all day, every day, I would come home and I would have to take pain medication because my head was hurting so bad. It's hard to constantly be in bilingual mode, so just try to talk to us every chance you get. But most importantly, when you want to practice speaking English regularly, but you might not have anyone to practice with, train yourself to think in English. I cannot stress this enough. Get in the habit of thinking in English. You need to think in English. When you have no one else to talk to, think in English. Try to train your mind to think in English, even if it's little things here and there. I first realized that I was getting pretty fluent in Korean when I started having dreams in Korean, and also when I started thinking in Korean. I was like, this voice in my head it's not speaking English right now. What is this? I started thinking in Korean. I started thinking in the language that I was learning. And honestly, it helped me out a lot. Even nowadays, certain things when I have a quick thought, sometimes it's in Korean and it's at random. I can't control it. It's just there. So teach yourself to think in English. Also, no matter where you are in the world, I'm pretty sure you can find online language exchange community. So, like I said again and again, Speak English with Tiffany. We're a family, and that's an online community where you can go and you can learn English. You can find people who are either native English speakers, like myself, like Tiffany, like Teacher Joseph, or you can even find people that are in the same boat as you. Most of the students there, if not all, are literally in the same boat as you. They are trying to speak English like a native English speaker. And believe it or not, having conversations with your peers, somebody who is literally on the same journey as you are, is sometimes even more effective than having a conversation with a native English speaker. Because sometimes you can get nervous or you start like, oh, I'm so nervous and I forgot everything I've learned because you think, we're going to judge you. We will not judge you. Well, I'm speaking for myself and I know the other teachers in the academy, they're not going to judge you. Some people out there, they're just rude. They're going to judge because, humans are humans. But most of the time, people aren't going to judge you at all, I will say. So don't be scared. And so get involved in language exchange programs. There's some apps like Hello Talk. I think there's another one, Meef or something like that. I don't quote me on that, but there's a few language learning apps out there for you where you can meet and connect with people who are trying to learn your language, and then maybe they're Americans trying to learn Korean or trying to learn Japanese, trying to learn Spanish, and then you are trying to learn English, so you guys can connect and have like a little language exchange on there. But also just if you don't have anyone around you, take part in like virtual conversation classes or language meetups in your area. Like I said, even if you're not speaking with a native English speaker, if you are just speaking English or listening to English, it's good. It's a step in the right direction. All right. So that's how you can practice speaking English regularly, even if you don't have any native English speakers around you or in your area. So thank you guys for giving me your questions. I really enjoyed answering them. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. It's a little bit long on the long side, but again, this is just me talking about things that I want to talk about. I'm adding in questions like a Q&A portion. I'm adding in some little fun facts. I'm adding in, some definitions of some idioms, some slangs here and there, but I'm just speaking what's on my mind. And, today, summertime sadness, both parents and kids, how to keep your kid busy during the summertime and the struggles that follow with trying to keep your kid busy during the summertime. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this podcast episode of Tea with Carley. If you did, please like, comment, and subscribe. Please in the comments put some suggestions for a future podcast or some questions that you may have so I can use them in the future podcasts. And I hope to see you all in the next episode.